place like our home. Hoist the sails high, let the solar winds blow. This cosmic sea shanty is a tale we all know. Navigating constellations, charting the unknown. With the stardust in our veins, we are never alone. From the Milky Way shores to the depths of black holes, we'll sing our sea shanty as the universe unfolds. Sail up high to the galactic sky on our moonlit voyage. We'll keep reaching high. We're sailors of the cosmos, a crew full of might. Let's sing this sea shanty under starry night's light.
Hoist the sails and let the wind guide our way. We're the spacemen sailing the cosmic bay. From Jupiter to Saturn we'll deliver our freight on our starship, sailing through the interplanetary strait. With a hardy crew and a cargo of dreams, through the nebula's mist we'll forge our own schemes. In the vastness of space where no man has been, we'll navigate, chart the unexplored galactic highway. Heave ho, mateys, upon the starry sea. We're the spacemen sailing through infinity. With our voices loud and our spirits free, we'll voyage across the celestial sea. Oh, 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 voyage across the celestial sea. Oh.
From the darkness, we'll shine. the abyss of the cosmos we set sail. Through crimson skies our ship prevails. Across the stars a celestial flight, metal warriors bound by might. Ooh, yeah. In this realm of shadows darkness unfurls, a symphony of chaos, where planets swirl and nebula of fury untamed, sailing through.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my stream. There we go. Hello. How's everyone doing? Hope everyone's doing well. Enjoying your Memorial Day weekend? Or if you're not an American, enjoying your weekend. I mean, it doesn't have to be a special holiday to enjoy your weekend. You can enjoy it regardless. I got coffee. I have hydration. Got no monsters today, but I heard a rumor that there might be a delivery of monsters later. But we'll have to see. I'm doing okay. Doing okay. Been packing boxes for the last couple days. Clean out the garage Thursday. It just messed me up on the sinus side. Bleeding sinuses and everything, so that's why I didn't stream on Friday. I was feeling quite bleh. Anyways, good morning, Gene, a man of memes, Rolando, Marcus, Postmatic, which is also Marcus, Menetheria, Thorfinn, Slow Motion, Frog Godfather. What else have we got here today? Gene, Anthony, hope you're all doing well. Right. Oh, we're up to 18. Hello. Hello. Greetings, salutations. I hope you're all doing fantastically. Yep, that's right. Just making sure all the streaming stuff is streaming as it should be. Which it seems to be. Oh, coffee. Let's move it over to the other hand, so I don't have to avoid the microphone stand. I'm ambidextrous. I can drink coffee with either hand. Good morning, Andrew. Hope you're doing well. Okay, so it's a Friday, Monday, public holiday. Awesome. All right. People are still streaming in. Nice, relaxed Sunday morning. So I must say that YouTube Shorts and TikTok is a fascinating place. So I was going to weigh myself today because, you know, I'm on the Ozempic stuff. And I thought, I wonder if I'm weighing myself wrong. And I went online and they taught me a new method to weigh myself that is actually more, it boosts self-confidence and stuff. So the basic premise is you pull the scales out you turn it on, and then you stand next to it, and you just give the scale a dirty look. And then, that's it. That's apparently the correct way to weigh yourself. Good morning, Samantha. Hope you're doing well. On the docket today is 3 or 4 re-TFOS. Depending on how the voice holds up. Excuse me. There may be sneezing. Been sneezing all morning, so sinuses are a bit poked. Or bleeding, whichever. I don't think they're bleeding today. They've not been happy all week. But it's that time of year. Okay. Work mode. Well, I mean, it's amazing. My left-hand sinus has become very sensitive and bleeds. Didn't do it before, really. Awesome. I hope that's International House of Pancakes? Question mark. Alrighty. No, we don't need to zoom in. We just need to center it. Move that over there. Start with first story. All right. Yeah, and no, just sinuses. I tried snorting coke once. The bubbles just burned the hell out of me. Yes, Andrew, I have seen Taylor. The Taylor. We've taken measurements. They've taken money. And 4 to 6 weeks. So 4 to 6 weeks, I should have my new jacket. And then I can release the super secret special thing as well. But in the meantime, we've got lots of stuff happening in the next 4 weeks anyway. So it is looking very likely that we'll be out of the country by the end of July. Hopefully a bit earlier. But there is that. So there may be interruptions in the streams as we're packing and selling stuff. And all of that stuff. Because we need to send most of our non-essential stuff via ship, and that takes 3 months. So the sooner we get that done, the better. And that'll be things like not antiques, furniture from my parents and stuff, and my card collections, and all those sorts of things. Stuff that you can't easily replace, and that's going to be put on a ship and sent across. Then we're living in an empty house for a little while, and we sell all of our stuff, including the beds and stuff, and then we leave. So it's going to be a busy month and a half. I'm not sure whether I will still wear this jacket, but we'll see. Good morning, Nigel. Yeah, I mean, it's been 18 months now that we've been working on this, or trying to work on this. So, it's kind of nice that it's coming to an end, but, you know, red tape. Always red tape. But, yeah. Monday, I'm talking to a realtor, trying to find a 1-year lease in Portugal. And once we have that, it's another hurdle down. Because there's some strange stuff with this type of immigration. I have to sign a 1-year lease before I can get my visa. Or buy a house before I can get my visa. I need to transfer money there before I get my visa. I need to get health insurance for everyone before we get the visa. Something else was very odd. Can't remember. So, I mean, the requirements before we get a visa to go there to look for stuff. I've honestly never had a Steers veggie burger. Also, haven't eaten Steers in a long time. I used to eat them all the time. I used to have the what was it? King Steer burger. The large chips. But then the quality just turned to crap. Like, seriously. And I just haven't eaten there. And now, if I'm in a mood for a burger, I eat at Rockamama's. Well, once everything's settled on that side, I am planning on doing a video about it. And the costs. The costs, the time, the effort, everything we went through. That's sort of just a brief thing. But that's not a today problem. Today we are doing Retifos. My chair keeps... There we go. I have to roll the chair so that the back wheel is in the grout of the tiles. Otherwise I keep rolling back. But I can honestly say that it is a ridiculous amount of money to do it legally. And this is the cheapest option. It only goes up from where we're going. Unless you want to go to a third world country like Paraguay? Uruguay? One of those two. Then it's cheaper. But why would I want to go from a third world country to another third world country? It is chewy bits in my coffee. Not exactly sure why. It's a good chair. It's an expensive chair. Only problem is the wheels are very loose. Not loose. Efficient. So moving around is easy. But because I'm on tiles, it just rolls back and forward. Good morning, Matty D. Hope you're doing well. We'll start off with an M3. Dun, dun, dun. So for pizza, lately we've been eating Panarottis if we have pizza. But we used to have a very local, very good, traditional wood-fired. Panarottis is also wood-fired, but in the old house there was a 40-year-old little Italian pizzeria. And they made good pizzas. Simple. They didn't have any fancy pizzas like double crusts or stuffed crusts or anything like that. They just did traditional pizzas. I think they had for years just 10 pizzas that they did. Good morning, James. I hope you're doing well. So, I mean, the best burger that I've ever had was at a fair. It was just a random, I think it was a tattoo fair or something like that. Or an alternative fair. And it was just this guy making burgers. Plain burgers. Just a cheeseburger. That's all they had. My God, was that a good burger. And they weren't even from like a store or a chain. It's just some guy. They did this for fun. I don't know whether they laced the burger with crack, but it was good. M10. Yep, homemade burgers for the win. You want to make awesome hamburgers. When you get your hamburger mix, what you want to do is you want to grate some cheese and then chop it fine. And then mix a little bit of it in with the burger patty before you cook it. And then you cook it and you got a burger patty with little bits of molten cheese in it. It's very nice. Yeah, it's very nice. And the oils from the cheese also helps cook it. So it makes it nice and juicy. Okay, so this dude is Will. M3 is Will. M10 is Carl. Carl. Isn't there a meme for, what's it, Walking Dead? No? Yes. Yes. Will is M3. Cold is M10. M3. M10. M3. M10. M3. M10, I'm assuming. For a non-food channel, we discuss food in this chat an inordinate amount of times. It's glorious. Glorious, I tell you. It does make me hungry, though. Carl is 10. Will is 3. Carl is 10. Will. Fair enough. Well, I think food is something that everybody can get behind, but food is also something that has started many an argument. Like pineapple on pizza. Which, by the way, I don't like pineapple on my pizza because I don't like pineapple. M1. M13. M10. M1. The dog is not happy. He doesn't like pineapple on his pizza either. Oh, you got 2 cats. Hello, kitty. Hello. Nope. The old cat is exploring. The boss is under the table, but the old cat is just wandering around in a old cat daze. Yeah, 2 kitties today. The whole herd. One's 8, the other one's 16. Somewhere around there. Good morning, Amtru. Welcome. Not exactly sure who Marcus King is, but awesome. The boss is looking unimpressed, but the boss always looks unimpressed. Science fiction food channel. Sure. I have played System Shock. 20 years ago, I think, was when the first one came out. Whenever the first one came out, I played it then. On a 486 or something. Awesome. I do want to try a proper American-style pizza at some point. Maybe I'll visit the States. I don't know. So much is up in the air. But it's easier to visit the States from Europe than it is from South Africa. Because we have to fly up to Europe to go to the States. So everything costs so much more. Yeah, well, I mean, blues and jazz aren't my cup of tea, but a good guitarist is a good guitarist. food is food. I mean, personally, I prefer wood-fired, but it's like comparing one type of burger to another type of burger. Awesome. Story done. Teleprompter opened. Excuse me, just need to blow my nose. All right. Sorry about that. Okay, teleprompter software in place. Video recording software in place. Why are we... Monitor out of the screen. I don't know why it's now picking up this little bit of desk. I can't move the desk. Whatever. I don't even have anything green to throw on it. Oh, whatever. Whatever! Okay. I think we're ready. Ready. No, dog is still upset. Dog is very upset. All the dogs are upset. Let me just go check what that is, and I'll be right back. Just make sure nobody's breaking into the house. And we'll be right back. Patamo.
Set sail on a ship. To the stars we shall roam, through the vastness of space, no place like our home. Hoist the sails high, let the solar winds blow. This cosmic sea shanty is a tale we all know. Navigating constellations, charting the unknown. With the stardust in our veins, we are never alone. From the Milky Way shores to the depths of black holes, we'll sing our sea shanty as the universe unfolds. Sail up high to the galactic sky on our moonlit voyage. We'll keep reaching high. We're sailors of the cosmos, a crew full of might. Let's sing this sea shanty under starry night's light.
All right, back. And look, I made it disappear. It's green. And nobody was breaking into the house. So that's all good. Okay, music volume down. Video recording started. Audio recording started. And glasses off. Straighten out the beard. And away we go. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from... Nope, it's not Tales from Outer Space. This is Retifos. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest episode of Retifos, where I take old stories and update them to new techniques. And update them to the new recording standards. Yeah, today's going to be rough. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Retifos, where I take old videos and update them to modern standards in recording and video tech. This particular story is called Bird Brains, written by Regal Legal Eagle.
You can't do this. It's insane.
They were walking quickly down the service corridors of the station while Carl checked the straps on the strange suit that he was wearing. It had been hastily assembled, but he'd already had the plans for it, so he was convinced it would work. He just had to get Will to stop worrying. Look, the aviation. Look, the Avesians. Look, the Avesians are already here, and they're going to mess this entire place up. Unless we do something, right?
Right.
Fighting them is straight out of the question, because we don't have the gear, the numbers, and even if we did, it would start a massive war, right?
Right.
So, this is the only shot we've got to peacefully end this. I'm telling you, I've studied their culture. I know how they work. I had the suit planned, didn't I? Stop freaking out, because fail or succeed, I'm doing this. Cole was satisfied that they'd made the suit to his specs.
But, how can you be sure? The other species say that we should just run away.
Will still wasn't convinced as they walked along. Yet he knew that they couldn't let the Avians... Yet he knew that they couldn't let the Avians... No. Yet he knew that they couldn't let the Avesians turn the station into the hunting nest, no matter what their leader demanded. After all, most of the other species here to trade would be considered prey, and he wasn't sure if the humans would also be on that list. Something had to be done. That's because all they do is stay away from the Avesians. You read the Galactic Pamphlet thing. No one deals with them. No trade, minimal negotiations, just intermittent wars, and lots of raiding. Well, I'm not going to let that continue. Humanity is going to open up a dialogue with these Xenos, and it starts here. I studied these sorts of behaviors in college, you know. If I'm right, they're like the raptors back on Earth.
Oh, what kind of raptors?
Will asked then. The ones with feathers, Cole said with a shrug.
Well, what kind?
What do you mean? I just told you, the kind with feathers.
No, I got that, but are we talking about the dinosaurs or the birds?
Will frowned as he tried to make sense. They're all birds. Those horror vids you watch are all wrong. They didn't have scales or leathery skin.
No, wait, I know that. I mean, are we talking about the flying kind or the ones on the ground?
What? Cole stopped walking, then looked at Will. What are you going on about? Flying? All raptors have feathers. I'm not talking about the kinds they show in those silly movies where the humans keep getting eaten by big terrible lizards.
I get that, Will huffed. I mean, are you talking about the ones from the millions of years ago, or... Are you talking about the ones from millions of years ago that were pack hunters on the ground, or birds who fly around and stuff? The hawks and the falcons and such, birds of prey.
Oh! Cole finally understood. The pack hunters from millions of years ago, but with other bird-like behavior. He looked up at the hatch to Hangar 15, where the Avesians' fleet was setting up. where the Apesian's fleet was setting up inside. Then he looked back at Will. "Is everything ready?" Will sighed for a moment and then nodded.
Yeah, everything's ready.
"All right, time to make history." Cole popped open the hatch and stepped inside, before Will quickly sealed it shut behind him. Out of all species they dealt with, the Apesians were far and away the most colourful. He also thought they smelled the best, as he caught sense of some sort of woodsy smell mixed with something floral. It didn't take long before he was noticed in his drab, strange suit, covered by a bunch of fabric and cloth. The drab-looking workers didn't bother him, but soon several large, colourful Xenos, their warrior class, approached him. They were the ones of the more similar species to humans they'd encountered, but they were one of the more similar species to humans they'd encountered, but their legs were on backwards and were more bony like a bird. Plus, their retractable talons were something else entirely. Other than that, their warrior caste averaged 7 feet, not including their plumage. They had feathers along their arms, too short to be useful wings, more along the ribs, and a large tail sort of like a peacock, but more flexible. While the other species didn't know much about their history, Cole was fairly certain that they'd been able to fly, maybe glide, but he didn't think so. No, their plumage was purely for social hierarchy. "Human, the Grand Hunter locked."
Human, the Grand Hunter locked this hangar for a reason. Preparations are underway. We're not to be disturbed.
"Yeah, well, I'm here to tell them that there won't be a hunt. Take me to him right now." Cole was firm, and the worker seemed uncertain, so he scowled and turned to guide Cole to the direct middle of the hangar. Their makeshift nests were being built, colourful banners hanging from ships and tents all over. The Grand Hunter was assembling his own feathered throne with sticks and feathers of his warriors, who had sworn him fealty when Cole arrived. He could see figures in tents beyond the Xeno leader in colourful tents. He caught brief glances and could hear higher-pitched trilling of female Apesians. That would be the Grand Hunter's harem. They were likely fasting before the hunt. The females gathered food, while the males gathered trophies, usually. Well, there wouldn't be any hunting if he had his way with things. The Grand Hunter growled as the warrior pulled up, but Cole walked up to him. "What is the meaning of this? We forbid strangers from entering while we prepare for the hunt." "Yeah, well, there won't be a hunt." "Yeah, well, there won't be any hunt. I'm challenging you for control of your flock, tribe, clan, whatever you call it." The Xeno blinked and then arched his head up as he opened and closed his mouth while making a sort of honking noise. That was the Apesian laughter. "You are more drab than my workers. You could never—" Before he finished, Cole yanked a cord connecting straps around his suit, releasing them to let out a crafted plumage spring out around him. The Grand Hunter jumped back in shock, his own plumage spreading out wide. But Cole's was brighter and bigger. He could see the worry in the Xeno's eyes. And now, to really seal the deal. "Now!" he shouted, as the lights in the hangar dimmed and a spotlight shone down. On him as the music began, he turned and then he began to strut forwards. Towards some of the assembled warriors as their plumage quickly flared out. "You know this boogie is for real." He could see the confused Xenos flap their plumage in a little as he approached, so he gave a little hop before getting up in their face as he started dancing to the music. He kept focusing on the first group, circling around them as he moved and waving his hands in his faces to accent his moves. Despite being more than a foot shorter,
They were clearly intimidated as he tapped into a social structure thousands of years old. Before long, they had closed up their plumage and dropped to their knees, so he turned to the next group, turning away from them and actually moonwalking back towards their position, before spinning around and actually slapping the ones up in front with the fake plumage under his arms before he jumped and clicked his heels, which he knew they couldn't effectively do. The move made them quickly close up their own plumage and drop to their knees. Turning, he bobbed side to side for a moment before dancing across the floor as if he was dancing the salsa. He circled around the Grand Hunter, who was nervously facing him. He then yanked open the tent of females. He yanked open the tent with the females, and then he yanked open the tent the females were in. He heard surprised trills and squawks, but they were all crowded around the entrance, so he knew they'd been paying attention. For this segment, he actually dropped down a little for a brief Cossack dance as he kicked his legs out to the beat of the song, before flopping onto his back and then kicking down to rise up into a headstand. While he spun around, he could hear the trills of the females grow louder as he stopped the spin by flopping his legs down, only to extend his arms and quickly wriggle across the floor while he did the worm. When he reached the far end of the tent, he hopped back up to his feet and figured the only way to leave was to once more moonwalk straight back out of the tent. The females quickly poured out, surrounding him and the Grand Hunter now. He turned to face his last challenge directly. He could tell that the Xeno was confused and entirely unprepared for the sudden change of his authority, so he quickly went for the throat, metaphorically. Strutting right up to the Xeno's face, he gave the bird the bird and kept dancing to the music. He circled the Xeno leader, sometimes facing him, sometimes facing away, constantly moving his arms and legs to the beat, and repeatedly slapping the Xeno with his faux tail plumage. Finally, as the song wound down, he stopped, facing away from the Grand Hunter, looking into the excited faces of the females. He leaned back, seeming to flop over backwards, only to carefully arc his back to press down on his hands to launch himself at the Grand Hunter, driving his feet into the Xeno's chest, making him gasp in shock and stagger backwards, stumbling and then tripping as he fell, the females quickly parting and not even attempting to break the fall. Cole panted for breath as he lay on the ground, forcing himself to stand back up and then walk to the shocked Xeno. He reached down and yanked one of the Xeno's tail feathers free, which brought out a pained whimper. Then Cole reached up and tucked the tip of the feather into the back of his collar. As he did that, the Xeno closed up his plumage, and all around, the warriors, the workers, and females cheered their hawk-like cries. "There will be no hunt. Instead, my clan shall provide a feast," he yelled above the cries, arms raised. He was panting hard still, sweating just about everywhere from the intense strain of the dancing, but they quickly rushed in to lift him into the air. He was the Grand Hunter now. Diplomats and soldiers would be damned. This time, dancing won the day. End of story.
Yep. Good old-fashioned Billy Bob dance-off. Alright, that's story 1 done for the day. And we'll move on to story 2, which is a longer one. Alright. Probably need some hydration. Alright, M1. Greetings, Draven. I hope you're having a fantastic morning and weekend. This is about a 30-minute story, so it's quite a long one. Excuse me. Fair enough, Draven, fair enough. It's okay. It's doing okay. So my range is here, but it does, in all, seem a bit more sensitive to environmental effects than before. But we just roll with the punches and get going. Hopefully, within the next week or two, we can move on to series. I think the stamina is getting there. But we shall see. Oh, Lich in a Ditch was funny. I liked it. Well, not funny. wholesome, I suppose, is the better word for it. Oh, we can do narrator voice, not narration. Announcer voice, M11. Haven't used this one in a long time, chat. I'm excited. Okay, so this is 4. This is 10. This is 5. M10. I'm glad you're enjoying it, Nigel. M13, I suppose. Got a whole host of voices here. But thankfully it's only little bits. Little bits. My biggest problem with Retreat Hell, it's not a problem. It's just the chapter lengths were so large. Ridiculously large. Basically like half of actual novel is each chapter. He was getting between 50 and 60, 20 and 30,000 words per chapter. And it's a bit difficult to work that into a schedule. And it seemed to focus more on the will they, won't they romance rather than the shooty, skopskit and donna. So, there is that. I'll probably start with Survivor Becomes Dungeon. It's where I left off, so I'll start that again. And then after that, when we move on to the second series, I'll probably do the new species, the new threat, book 2 of New Species. So I want to kind of have on the series channel, I want one series which is fantasy and one series which is sci-fi. So that way, there's something for everyone. Well, I'm glad the dialysis is working. Yeah, I mean, all you can do is adapt and overcome. So, trying to figure out how to work around the new voice. Nigel, I'm not sure when that'll happen, but it will happen. Well, I mean, that's the good thing with doing one of each. So if somebody only wants science fiction series, they get that. Somebody who only wants fantasy series, they get that. And if somebody wants both, they get it. I think it's the best solution. I think having two of one at the same, or two of the same genre at the same time is just excludes people. I'll definitely look at Perfectly Wrong. The thing with the new threat is it's a complete book, so there is an ending, which I actually like those. So there's a solid ending. With open-ended stories, most likely thing that's going to happen is it's going to go on hiatus, unfortunately. M4. M10. Thank you very much for becoming a channel member. Let me try that again. Thank you very much for becoming a channel member, Raven Nightcry. It's very much appreciated. Good morning, Tatsy Boy. I hope you're doing well. Yeah, the death. But I mean, that's not a series, it's a trope. So it happens all over the place. Yeah, I mean, I can understand it. If you're not earning a living off of it, you need to earn a living before you can do fun stuff. So if you're, as an author, not earning enough money to do it, then you're gonna not do it in favor of money. Live ad and a live chat. Never heard of that. Ooh, thank you for the gifted sub, Gene. Gifted membership, Gene Donald. Yeah, I don't know. YouTube have been doing some really weird stuff with ads recently. Oh. I've done something to my right eye. It's so scratchy, and it's been scratchy since last week. If it continues on much longer, I might need to go to a ophthalmologist? Question mark. An ad in chat. That just sounds stupid. I mean, I can't complain too much. Ads is... Oh, 5 gifted memberships, Gene Donald. Thank you very much. It is very, very much appreciated. And just a note, nobody picks who gets a membership. It is randomly assigned to anybody in the chat. Well, in South Africa, we've got Valhalla as a little town in the middle of nowhere. So if you ever want to visit Valhalla, there is one in South Africa. Yeah, I've got eye drops that seem to help a bit. But I've only been using them since yesterday, so we'll see how that goes. I don't think it's anything serious. If it was serious, it would have happened quicker. I mean, my eye is not overly bloodshot or anything, only from, like, scratching. So I'm not too worried about it. But, you know, anything that continues on for more than 2 weeks, you probably need to see a doctor if you can. I do know my dad suffers from problems with, was it eye lice? I think it's called. Something like that. Eye lice. Yes. He had his cataract surgery. I have no idea. I've never been. I just know that it is very, very much in the middle of nowhere. As in, it's not in the middle of nowhere. It's 20 miles downrange from the middle of nowhere. It looks nice. Oh, there's a Valhalla suburb in Pretoria. Which is not the one I'm talking about. I think it's actually an abandoned town. So we've got a lot of abandoned mining towns here, so. Yeah. So my dad's had that because of a tradesman, and then my grandfather lost his eyesight for 75 years, because he got a splinter of wire in his eye. Well, South Africa was the predominant producer of gold for 99 years. But we've got pretty much everything here. Palladium, platinum, tungsten. What's the other one? The very, very copper. Trying to remember. Gold, platinum. I think we have many big silver mines. Copper. Trying to think of the other one. I don't think bauxite is major here either. I'm going to say yes, Nigel. It depends on which city, but yes. Probably. Yeah, they are. So those abandoned mines could very well be property of gangs for illegal mining. Which is a thing here. Because nobody owns mineral rights. So you need a license to mine. And then big companies will be like, oh, there's not enough whatever in this mine, and they abandon it. And then gangs take over and force people to mine. Or people just do it voluntarily. It doesn't even happen in, like, abandoned mines in the middle of nowhere. It happens in abandoned mines in the middle of Joburg. For those, I suppose, a little bit of a history/geography lesson, Johannesburg only exists because of gold mines. It is a very bad city. There's no natural water, where it's in the middle of a fricking desert. But because of all the mines, it was profitable. Now there are no more mines in Johannesburg, so we're still around. And then a lot of the old mines are being mined illegally. Yeah, it's not pleasant. Yeah. There's lots of small mines as well. So Rustenburg is surrounded by lots of small mines. Your big ones are gold. Diamonds is mostly off the coast. Platinum and then coal for the coal-fired power stations. Yeah. We keep the crap coal for the coal-fired power stations and we sell the good coal to China, I think. Yeah, that happens here all the time. Copper theft is pretty bad. I've seen what happens when it goes wrong. I've seen what happens when it goes right. So I had to get a 24-hour security guard for the property I was selling while the process of selling it was going on, so that people didn't break in and rip the copper wires out the walls, which they do on a regular basis. They'll steal all the copper, they'll steal all the pipes. Sometimes they'll even steal the flooring, which is wood. Some people even go into active substations to try steal the earth bar, which is great. As long as you don't touch anything else, you can take the earth bar. The moment you touch anything or get too close to anything else, you evaporate. I think it's the best way to describe it. Or partially evaporate. Alright. I mean, load shedding helps with that. So they'll time it for when an area goes into load shedding, and they'll go steal the copper cables from substations. Or they purposely trip it, which is easy enough. You just dig a hole under a power cable, and you light a fire under it, and you fuck off, and then the cables will melt and short out, and then you can go steal as much as you want. AJ, we've had worse squatter problems than the US for years now. Building hijacking is very real. It's one of the reasons why I had a 24-hour security guard. I can say this with fairly decent confidence. Any problem the States has, we've had for a long time. Squatter rights is a thing. There are massive gangs that steal houses and then rent them out, especially in rundown areas. And there's very little you can do about it. They passed a law several years ago that if you do not evict them in 24 hours, I think it is, then you have to go through a court case. So we had a rash of people building like Wendy houses on properties, because you had to, there's a house and they could call it their own, you couldn't evict them. So you needed to evict them before they made the Wendy house. I haven't heard much about that recently, so I think they might have changed the law regarding that. Okay, on to more cheery things, I think, rather than crimes and desperation. We'll go into a story. It's always good. Anyways, on to the story. Greetings, ladies and metalgents, and welcome to this latest edition of Free Tifos, where I take old stories that I've done and update them to modern standards in video and audio. This particular story is called The Roar, written by Regal Legal Eagle. He stood at the edge of the field and listened to the buzz. It sounded far off, subdued, but he knew that it was just the warm-up. Alcohol, narcotics, money, none of that could give him the same sort of feeling as he got listening to the crowd. The game hadn't even begun yet, and he loved it. Just the sound of people moving into place, filling the stadium. The others were all in their meditation chambers, trying to clear their minds and open their spirits for the ritual. They didn't understand the human concept of getting pumped before a game. The cultists were very fond of meditation, reflection, and all that sort of thing. And why not? They were centuries ahead of everyone else in terms of tech. Everyone was reliant on their continued goodwill towards the lesser species. They'd always been rather mysterious and enigmatic. They didn't respond to many diplomatic requests, trade delegations, or even declarations of war. They generally just politely but firmly told the younger species that they had no interest and sent them on their way. No one had ever been to their core worlds before. That is, until Victor. 3 years ago, he'd been just another agri-colony farm kid getting ready for an exciting life of farming dirt. He was good enough at baseball and football and the other football that he might have had a chance of getting a scholarship to a decent school. But instead, 6 months before graduation, a cultist ship crashed into the planet. It was some sort of prototype that had gone wrong. Even gods made mistakes. Miraculously, only one person had been near enough to the impact site to get caught in the blast. Him. He'd been out in the perimeter that morning, checking the fence, when his world exploded. Lost both legs and his left arm, plus the general case of fractured or broken ribs, skull fracture, internal bleeding. Good stuff. To make matters worse, when everyone in the hospital said that he was lucky that he didn't lose his right arm, he got to inform them that he was a lefty. Coming from a family of dirt farmers, he was looking at living the rest of his life with the cheap prosthetics, a fraction of strength of normal limbs, no feeling, and lots of phantom pain. Then the cultists showed up. For the first time in history, or human history, at least, they came to us. They apologized and gave his parents a massive sum of money, and only had one condition, that they could take Victor back with them, fix him up, and let him attend one of their own schools to make amends. Well, what could he say? The ambassador was there, the press. He smiled and got propped up for some pictures, said goodbye to his folks, said he'd return or call when he could, and then got taken to the cultist territory. The prosthetics were incredible, better than anything humans could make. It wasn't that they were stronger, or could shapeshift or anything like that, but they felt exactly like his real arm and legs. It was like he'd never lost them.
When he was doing physical therapy in rehab, they introduced him to the ancient cultist sport to test his reflexes and coordination. Venner. It was like a mix between capture the flag, American football, and hunting. Most species just had a modular obstacle course or a holographic targets, but real courses had small engineered forests and real animals. What would happen if two teams would set up on either side of a forest or obstacle course? Then the animals would be released into the center, and each side had to capture some animals to try and drag them back to their side, carry others into the team side, and just flat out try not to get stomped on by the rest of the animals, or the opposing team. When they'd first explained it to him, he was really confused, but he noticed that the seemingly peaceful cultists got really worked up just talking about it. They'd said that he shouldn't feel bad if he wasn't very good at the game, since in general humans had worse eyesight, less strength, and less speed than cultists. Then to everyone's surprise, including his own, he was amazing at it. First, they'd assumed it was a fluke. He was competing against cultists undergoing physical therapy, after all, so they set him up as their equivalent of a high school team. He crushed. Then they moved him into the equivalent of a college team. After all, they'd offered him to teach him. For the first time in his life, he had important people fighting over him. He got sent to the cultist capital of all places, and was enrolled in some fancy school. The coursework they originally gave him was so far beyond his level, it wasn't even funny. So they quickly found him the easiest classes possible for him and told him not to worry about the academics. His first year, he led the team through an undefeated season. They quickly gave him an honorary degree, and he got signed by the Praetorians. Despite the name, the team was the worst in the professional Venner League. Just being signed to any sort of professional team was in itself amazing, however. No other species had ever been offered, so his first professional year in Venner and his second with the cultists, he carried them onto a staggering 96 wins to 84 losses season. Made more impressive considering they'd been 40 to 140 the previous season. He felt like he would have done even better, but they insisted he rested and sat out every other game. The cultist players only played one game in 3 themselves. It was a hard, dangerous game. His right arm got broken 3 times in the season. So, when the season was over, they offered him a much larger contract. He turned it down, insisting they use the money to buy better players. Then, he tried to have them replace his right arm with a prosthetic, but voluntary amputation was a concept the cultists understood. But voluntary amputation wasn't a concept the cultists understood. So he took an axe to it in front of the cultist hospital and let them clean it up and give him a new replacement arm like he wanted in the first place. They thought he was insane. Maybe he was. But this season, he hadn't rested for a single game and the Praetorians had gone undefeated. After sweeping both opposing teams in the postseason, they'd faced off against the Royal Guard, long considered the greatest team in the history of the sport. They had the most funding, the largest bases, more Hall of Fame players, and more grand championships than any other team. And they'd made it clear that they were not interested in letting some impetuous little human win the grand championship. That promise had come 3 games ago, and the Praetorians, under Victor's guidance, won every single game. This wasn't what it came down to. One more win meant a completely undefeated regular and postseason. It meant the first time in history of non-cultists would be in the winning team. He'd already been the first human on a professional team, so this was just another record to beat. Plus, the first team in history any professional team had gone completely undefeated. It would be broadcast into the entirety of the cultist nation, 92% viewership, 28 billion people, and it wasn't broadcast anywhere else. There wasn't a single human in the crowds out there, It was all cultists, and he knew they were cheering for him. When he'd first left home, he'd expected to be homesick immediately, but instead he'd been focused on recovery, and then he started winning. He'd been to a pro baseball game back home once. Farm league pros. The energy at the game had been incredible to him. The cheering, the noise, the pure sensations that it built. But to be on the field, to hear the crowds cheering you on, it was better than anything else he knew. Nothing came close. He wasn't a drinker. The cultists didn't have narcotics for humans, and he wasn't brave enough to try screwing one of the women because he lacked the hard scales on his belly. So her quills would tear him up. All he had was winning. The other players needed to meditate and clear their minds to try and reach some sort of clarity of spirit, like they said was where they could focus on the game and push out what they considered to be noise of the crowd. There was a little distraction to them. But Vincent fed off of it. He ate it up and asked for more. He didn't do any kind of snowboarding. He didn't do any kind of showboating because there was no room for it in the sport. He just won over and over and over. He might lose 4 or 5 arms or legs per game, and he just slapped in a replacement and went back out. He never stopped. So when he heard the murmur of the crowd, he closed his eyes, imagining what it would be, imagining what it would sound like when the game was actually going. The rest of the team could sit in their quiet chambers and meditate. He wanted to hear the crowd. Victor! He turned back and saw the team manager. He was an older cultist. Quills were grey, and his scales were worn-looking. He didn't use artificial polisher like some older cultists did. They've given you the request. They've given your request the all clear. It's waiting for you. Victor just grinned and followed the cultist into what had been set aside as his meditation chamber, though he never used it. Instead of soothing pain, He never used it. Instead of soothing paintings or a Zen garden or anything like that, there was a massive bell waiting inside. They've hooked it up to the PA system. Please, press the red button and start ringing. The music will begin. I must admit, it's interesting to use music like this. Do you humans often incorporate music with sport? All the time. Victor nodded and rubbed his hands together as he looked at the bell. Might want to get out of here. It'll be loud. Might want to get out of here. It's going to be loud. Might want to get out of here. This will be loud. He said before his manager nodded and left the room. Then Victor pulled on the headphones they'd left him, pressed the red button on the wall and picked up the hammer. He took a slow breath and then slammed the hammer on the bell. It reverberated and rang out through the small room, which was picked up by the speakers. He could imagine the crowd now growing quiet. And confused as he kept ringing the bell. It wasn't some little thing just to make noise. It was a heavy, deep. It was heavy, deep. It was the sort of bells that only rang for funerals. As he kept ringing the bell, he finally heard the start of the guitar, then the bass. Then the drums came in, the heavy beat matching the tempo of the bell perfectly. Finally, he heard in his headphones, Victor, it is time. He left the meditation room. The others were lined up in front of the entrance to the field as he heard the music outside, but the crowd was quiet. Then there was the announcer. And now, welcome your home team, the Praetorians! The rest of the team began to jog out onto the field as the cheers began. Victor waited a moment as the lyrics of the song progressed and then jumped out onto the field as they hit the cue. I got my bell. I'm gonna take you to hell. I'm gonna get you, Satan. I'm gonna get you, Satan. Get you. Hell's bells. The roar of the crowd erupted then. He could feel the energy instantly. He could feel the cheering and hollering. He could see them on their feet all around the stadium as he held up his arms. What's the plan, Victor? Garnash asked him as he joined them on the field, and they began to run towards the side of the field. Half of you on defense, the rest on herding. What? Oh, no striking, Tishkash asked, clearly surprised. Yeah, I'll be our striker. We're up to 3 games, guys. They know they have to stop us here and now. They'll be pushing their own strikers very hard. Counter it. We can't afford to let this drag on. They've injured our players. They've injured 8 of our players. Any more of you go down, we might have to play short on the team. We win today, no doubts, no fears. Victory. I don't know how you make your spirit and soul so clear and focused, Kaigan said, with a shake of his head. Victor just laughed. He didn't need meditation to know that he wanted to win. With every fiber of his body, he needed to win. But with the crowd cheering him on, it was fecking invincible. He was 8 feet tall and mean as hell. This was his day. No, this was humanity's day. Even if the nearest human was light years away and had no idea what was going on right now, he vowed to win in the name of humanity. The cultists would cheer. They would roar for him, for humanity. They were approaching the center of the field, where the forest waited for them. Well, the incredibly well-crafted obstacle course that used real trees and rocks and a stream to make it interesting. The open field that they were in had 3 sections to it. On either far side were the pens they used to herd their animals into. In the center was essentially a stone well they'd tossed striker animals into. Back in the day, cultists celebrated games by slaughtering the animals in pens and letting the creatures in the well drown. These days, they herded animals had very cushy lives outside of games, and the well would lower the animals into a care of a veterinarian waiting in a special room below it. But, to be honest, Victor wasn't sure that he'd want to win any less bad if he had to slaughter the animals by hand. His desire to win was great, and it amused the cultists greatly that a direct translation of his name basically meant winner. Finally, they heard the horn being blown to signal the start of the game as Kikwa birds screeched and flew out of the forest in the center. The roar of the crowd got a bit more intense for a moment, and then the cultists around him, either shifted into more defensive positions or picked up the pace. Victor wasn't as fast as any of them and quickly fell behind. However, he caught up again as they entered the forest. The cultists were careful, sometimes paranoid creatures, always wary of an ambush or trap. They would also see very well, so there were times when teams would spend 15 or 20 minutes planning out ways to trap the enemy team inside the forest, each making moves and counter-moves from across the course. Victor didn't do that. He saw just fine by human standards, but in the thick of the forest that meant that he could see about 10 feet ahead of him at any given time, which meant that he planned 10 feet ahead. He knew where he wanted to go, however, so he just burst through the He knew where he wanted to go, however, so he just burst through the bushes and past the trees towards the mountain. It wasn't really a mountain, more of a hill at the top of the forest, where the stream started. It was where the most valuable striker animals rested, guarded by a very carefully bred and extremely pissed-off crag snapper. Strikers would work in teams to distract it and grab the small animals that hid near the beast. But that took time.
and usually meant the strikers wouldn't try it till later in the game, when they knew that there was no other choice. Not today. Victor kept a good jog as he ignored stealth and kept moving forward. There might be some cultists from the opposing team watching him and laying out some of the very elaborate and well-planned trap right now, but Victor would never know it. Take it as it came. Forge ahead, that's how he kept winning. As he reached the start of the mountain, the trees gave way to rocks, and he had to start moving up the rocky opening, with a little stream trickling down the center. He was hopping over it and building up speed as he hopped from rock to rock, starting to move recklessly fast in what was a dangerous area of the field. He could see the top of the path even out. And before he got to it, he reached up with his left hand and disconnected his right arm at the shoulder, putting it free with a pop. Then he screamed at the top of his lungs and raised the prosthetic arm in the air by the wrist and sprinting in the last few feet over the edge and into the opening beyond. Just what he expected. There was a shallow pond with a whole variety of colorful and exotic creatures around the edges. In the center was the crag snapper. It was essentially an elephant-sized gator with a turtle shell and an incredibly mean disposition. It started to rise from the deeper part of the pond, drawn by Victor's scream as it turned, mouth opening to reveal the massive rows of sharp teeth. But Victor jumped in the air and slammed his prosthetic down on the creature's head so hard that the entire thing cracked and then broke apart, shattering over the snapper's skull. The creature rocked back, stunned as Victor used the open maw of his springboard. As a springboard to jump onto the creature's back. He ran along it and spotted the loose portion of the shell, that he knew would be there. Quickly kneeling on the now rocking creature's shell, he flipped the section of shell up with his remaining hand. Inside was a very surprised Gispet, a sort of fox-eared ferret with a fur like a sable, or so he'd been told. He grabbed the creature before it could scamper off and then roughly stuffed it down the front of his own shirt, tugging onto the string that he had fastened to it to pull it tight. It made breathing a bit harder, but it was the easiest way that he could hold onto the critter. At least, the fur was incredibly soft in his chest. The teeth was less soft, but it would stop after a while. He began to run down the shell of the crag snapper now, seeing the exit from this area heading into the opposing team's territory. He quickly started moving down it as he heard the crag snapper behind him howl in rage and start to move forward. The rest of the creatures in the area began to move quickly to get out of its way. Soon enough, they were brushing past Victor as they got out of the way of the rampaging snapper. The enclosure was made to keep him stuck up in the mountain, but Victor could hear the shaking and crunching behind him as the creature tried to smash its way through the rock. At the very least, the rest of the animals in the forest were on high alert. Victor was back down in the forest and running for the territory of the enemy team when he burst through a bush and then fell forward as something snagged his foot. He barely caught himself before hitting the ground, narrowly avoiding crushing the gispet in his shirt. He had to practice doing things one-handed to make sure that he was still effective while missing an arm. He turned over and looked back as he saw his foot snagged in a very intricate rope of some sort. The knot itself he recognized as a sort of that you'd need two hands to loosen up. Back! This is the end for you, human. Victor looked around for a moment and then saw a cultist shake the dirt from foliage off his quills to get up.
We will break you here. You won't win. We can't allow it. You were never meant to get this far.
Tell that to my fans, Victor spat back. Even in the dense forest, they could hear the cheering crowd in the stadium around him. There were hidden cameras spread around to let them watch. They were obviously enjoying his progress so far.
The fans know nothing, the Xeno growled and swiped at the air. You will not endanger our prestige. Your team loses here. We've kept you from winning for 52 years. This will be no different. Look at you, one-armed and without a creature. What was your plan, anyway?
Victor realized the creature didn't know that he had the gispet in his shirt.
Just making trouble. You hear that screaming? I pissed off the crag snapper. It's trying to break out of the mountain. You didn't. I did.
The cultist looked at him and then back towards the mountain. He could know. He knew as well as Victor that his team would need help trying to herd animals through the path of the angry snapper.
This isn't over. Your leg is caught. You go nowhere.
The Xeno growled and then turned, sprinting towards the sound of the crag snapper, smashing apart the crafted mountain. Vincent tugged at the snare, but then... Vincent tugged at the snare then, but he wasn't strong enough to pull it apart one-handed. He couldn't use the pop. He couldn't just pop off his leg either. How the hell would he get... How the hell would he get to the enemy well? He looked around and then grabbed at a nearby rock, wincing as... He looked around and then grabbed a nearby rock, wincing a bit, as he prepared himself and started slamming the rock down on the prosthetic foot. He was soon gasping and crying in pain as he did. The rules allowed for his fake limbs because they weren't any stronger than he would have had if they were real. The rules allowed for his fake limbs because they weren't any stronger than he would have had if they were real. But so long as they were connected, they'd feel pain just like a normal limb. Normally, he'd just disconnect the thing and be done with it. But this time, he kept smashing the foot, hearing it crack and splinter before it was broken enough for him to pull the stump of his ankle free. Grabbing a nearby tree, he pushed himself up and tested his weight on the stump before screaming out in white, hot agony. Reaching up, he snapped a branch off of the tree, testing it as a very crappy but functional crutch. Then he leaned a bit and started hopping. He could push off the stump a bit and grit his teeth, ignoring the pain as he moved. When he got to the edge of the forest, he saw an empty field. They'd sent everyone into the forest, no defenders. He laughed and kept hopping forward. Then he heard the crowd roar out as they saw him emerge. Victor! Victor! He grinned and tried to move faster. He was about halfway to the well when he heard the scream of agony behind him. The cultists had come back, obviously knowing something was up when it heard the chant. Crap, Victor said. Crap, tried Victor, hobbling. Crap, Victor tried hobbling forward faster. The cultist was sprinting as hard as he could, towards him from behind. He could hear the chanting of the crowd and finally just tossed the branch behind him, putting more weight onto the stump and screaming in agony with every step. But also, every step brought him closer. With one hand, there was no way that he could get the gispet out to toss it into the well, not with the cultist so close behind. He moved closer and closer. Victor! 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 He was so fucking close. He heard the footsteps behind him. He could hear the cultists' ragged breathing. Victor! They were chanting his name, stomping their feet. 100,000 people here in the stadium. 28 billion people watching live. Victor! He was screaming non-stop now as he moved forward. He was at the edge of the well and he didn't know what to do. Still,
and he didn't know what to do still, so he just tumbled forward, nearly cracking his skull on the far side, as his knees slammed into the side of the well, and he began to tumble into it. Just when he thought that he was in the points, he would be... Just when he thought he was in, and the points would be his, he stopped. He looked up and saw the cultist clutching his intact right leg. Clutching his intact right leg by the foot. No! Victor reached up with his screaming hand. Victor reached up with his remaining hand and popped the release in his thigh. No! No! The cultist screamed in dismay as Victor now continued to fall into the well. He didn't know what would happen. The animals would fall gently into a veterinarian's facility to be cared for in case they were injured during the game. But the heaviest they weighed was like 10 kilograms. Victor might literally be too heavy and just plummeted to his death here. He felt something pluck at his face, like a hand trying to stop his fall by pressing on his cheek. Then there were others, but he was still moving quickly as he fell through the fake bottom of the well and got flipped around so his back hit the padded area with a heavy thud. He lay there for a few moments and then finally spoke. Ow! The team of cultists rushed into the padded area then, pulling his shirt off and pulling the gispet out. The creature looked surprised, but not harmed. Then the Xenos glanced at one another and back down at Victor, who just started laughing before groaning. He'd definitely fractured some ribs in that. What happens now? He finally asked. Yeah, you're out of the game, one said. Did the gispet count? Did the gispet points count? He looked around at the obviously confused and surprised faces. We don't know. The rules must be checked. Well, then get me a wheelchair or a new pair of legs and another arm and get me topside. I have to cheer my team on. What? But you're out of the game. I can't compete, but I can cheer. I can roar. You hear the crowd? They're shouting victory! Victory! They want us to win. Get me up there. So long as he had breath in his lungs, he'd urge his team on, by playing or by roaring. Soon enough, his voice was amongst the many in the crowd, cheering as loud as they could while they watched. Before the roar was for him, it might be again. But now, the roar was for his team. End of story. Alrighty, I'm back, chat. The roar. Roar. You want to see a magic trick, chat? Good morning, Lumen. Hope you're doing well. And Brian, I hope you're doing well. Welcome to the live stream. Shinobi, welcome. Okay, so magic trick. Magic trick. Nothing in this hand. Nothing in this hand. Ta-da! We got monster. Magical fairy dropped him off while I was narrating. Alrighty.
That's 2 out of 3 done. Okay, I'm going to minimize this. We are going to skip that. And we're going to open this. I think this will be the last one for the day, maybe. We might be able to do that, but I'm not sure. I'm only allowed a certain amount of custom emotes for members. So I'll see what I can do. Alrighty, next story. Alrighty. F1, M1, not F1. Blah, 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 M1. M1. M10, I think. Thank you for the kind words, Jendor. It's very much appreciated, and welcome to the stream. This is a 18-minute story, roughly. But seeing as these were so very, very nicely delivered,
There we go. Quantum energy. Got to hold the universe together. M1 ting. There you go. That's M1. I don't read, well, I don't knowingly read AI stories, Shinobi. All of these stories can be found on the HFY subreddit, written by people, as far as I know. This finished product will come out on Wednesday. Souls. Don't know. M13. Shall we go? M10. M3. Not sure what you mean, James. Ah, yes. It was Gene. I gifted 6 subs today. All right. Where am I? Keyja. This is M5, I think. No, that was Souls. Souls is M13.
M5. Okay, yeah, I was right. M10. It's going to be a voice. A veritable smorgasbord of voices. $12? $12. Should actually be M4. Snively voice. Yeah, M4, sure. Very strange. M1. M10. M1. Thank you very much for the gifted membership, Brian. It's very much appreciated. M1. M1. M10. M12 up to 4. This should actually be M5, I think. It's written more like an M5 than an M4. I don't think being a member stops ads. I know it does on Twitch. I don't know whether it does on YouTube. Who are you talking to, Megumi? I am using Windows. Alt F4. Well, that's a different. That's a different voice. The alternate version of female voice 4 is, and that's locked away. I've sealed that voice, and it shall remain sealed for the foreseeable future. Yeah, I mean, what I want to do is I want to get a Stream Deck, not a Steam Deck, and just use hotkeys. Alrighty, done. No, don't highlight everything, stupid program. Alright, moving on to the next story. Exciting stuff. This is a funny one, people. Hope you got your funny hats on and your little blower things on, so you can cheer on the funny story. You got your handkerchiefs ready to dab your eyes because you're gonna be laughing so hard. Yeah, I mean, if I really wanted to, I could just make an auto hotkey script. But it is what it is. Good morning, Kevin. I hope you're doing well. All right. Recording mode, recording video, recording audio, and away we go. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Retipos, where I take old stories and update them to modern techniques and standards. This particular story is called One Man's Trash, written by Regal Legal Eagle. Xavier Tetch glanced sideways at the others in his crew. Those that were left, that is. 5 of them, himself included. Their 4-armed Gratian Tula looking deadly and hot, as always, with her daggers. Nack Ross shifted his massive stone arms, ready for another booby trap or crystalline guardian to appear. Jurek was still fiddling with her rebreather, trying to get the appropriate mixture for the atmosphere on the moon. And of course, the Professor, the only other human, was in front of the sarcophagus trying to disarm the lock and get it open. They'd lost 6 to the traps and the guardians in the ancient Sophic tomb, but the treasure the Professor had told them about was just too good to pass up. Overall, Xavier had been prepared for the others to try and stab him in the back or shove him off a ledge, since humans were the new kids on the block, galactically speaking. So most of them didn't fully appreciate the resourcefulness he brought to the table. But truthfully, everyone had been spending too much time surviving to worry about betraying everyone. Until now. His hand slowly moved up to his side, slipping under the back hem of his jacket as he looked at the Xenos on either side. Jarek and Nack first to the right, Tula to the left after them. There was a very loud click as the Professor did something, and the stone top of the sarcophagus began to creak open. "Got it!" he exclaimed, as Xavier's fingers closed around the handles of Athena and Aphrodite.
He yanked them out free. He yanked them free, pulling the triggers even as he leveled them out. The Xeno started to turn as he hit Knack in the side of the head several times, blasting rock-like chunks out before the Xeno flew back. Jurek was reaching for her personal shield generator, but she never made it as the bullet slammed into her, peppering her body and letting gases escape out of her pressure suit. Tula, though, was quick. She turned spinning, her daggers... Tula was quick, though. Tula, though, was quick. She turned, spinning her daggers as Xavier realized his mistake in shooting her last. Just as he twisted and leaned back, she was already too close. A pair of daggers slicing off his left hand and sending Athena flying as he screamed out. Another dagger slashed up across his face, but then he had Aphrodite pressed against her chest as he held the trigger down, knocking the Xeno back, purple blood spewing from the wounds and splattered across him on the ground. "Back!" Xavier screamed, dropping Aphrodite and clutching this bleeding stump. He looked over at the professor, who was ducking down, hands over his head. Professor! Xavier growled out until the man hesitantly pulled his hands back and looked around. "Come on, the Ned. The treasure is just for you and me now. Get that surge kit over here, though." The professor quickly moved, pulling the military-grade surge kit, holding it up to Xavier's bleeding stump. The device quickly slapped a biogel onto the stump, and then sealed up the wound before dumping morphine into Xavier's bloodstream. He'd deal with his right eye later. The cut had sealed it shut with blood, so he was only looking out of his left for now. "Oh, that's the stuff." He gasped as the drugs did their work, and the pain completely vanished. Why did you kill them?" the professor finally asked. Because that way it's just 50-50 split. They'd have betrayed us once we got out of here, you know. What's in there?" Xavier's mind was already focusing on the golden gems, the ancient alien artifacts. The professor walked over and reached in, pulling out a stone tablet. He began to read it as Xavier stood back, grabbing Aphrodite and walking over to look inside. "The feck! It's just shriveled old corpse!" he gasped out as he saw what was inside the stone sarcophagus. The tablet says, by now you've passed our tests of poetry, enlightenment, and wisdom. You will see the greatest treasure is not riches or wealth, but peace and serenity. The ability to find the tranquility in a universe and appreciate the riches of life and nature." Xavier looked over at the professor, open mouth. "What?" "That's what it says." The professor hefted its own tablet. The traps the Guardians were supposed to have been defeated now. The traps and Guardians were supposed to be defeated with poetry and stuff, I guess. Not explosives and weapons. They stood there and quiet for a moment before Xavier lifted his right hand and shot the professor through the chest, shaking his head as the professor dropped down dead. "Yeah, Jesus Christ. Feck these ancient ruins crap," Xavier muttered as he walked over to pick up his left hand with Athena still in its grip. He tucked the hand and gun into his pack and began walking out of the tomb. Xavier Blood-Eye Tetch sucked in a breath as Saul sealed up a hole in his shin with a bone plug, his cybernetic eye remaining open as he squeezed his left eye shut reflexively from the pain. These Lacats fought damn hard to protect whatever was in the vault. This had to be worth it. After hearing about the secret vault in the Lacat homeworld, he had assembled a crack team of thieves, mercs, and pirates to raid the facility. He was down to just 6 men, not including himself. But there they were, at the vault itself. Nasal was cracking the code now, while the others guarded the Lacat aristocrats that they'd captured, and Sauls worked on patching him up.
"You fiends, vile ruffians!"
One of them was growling at Xavier, but he just ignored the Xeno. "Heard it before," he muttered with a sigh. Instead, he focused on a few Instead, he focused on the few left in his crew. Remember, we all get an even split, and if I don't make it out of here, then you don't get an antidote. Remember, we all get an even split, and if we don't, remember, we all get an even split, and if I don't make it out of here, then you don't get the antidote. I won't have any of you betraying the others. There's going to be more than enough to go around. Look at the size of this vault, not to mention the security that were killed in the way.
I still can't believe you poisoned us.
The simmering ember headed Xeno Kicha growled. Truth was he hadn't actually poisoned them, he just told them that. I've been in too many treasure hunts to know how tempting it is. I want as many of us walking out of this one as possible, Xavier promised. Speaking of, you're good, Saul said before helping Xavier back up to his feet, the metallic fingers squeezing the handle of Athena as he nodded and turned to the vault. There was a very promising click, then the massive metal doors began to swing out. Xavier grinned wide, prepared for golden gems and ancient artifacts. But nothing inside was gleaming. He frowned and stepped forward, walking into the vault as Nassif was packing up her gear. Looking around the vault, he found a small case at the back, and that's it. Opening the case, he saw a small hydroponic setup for a small plant or tree or something, and a pair of old envelopes and wax seals. What the feck is this? He asked, grabbing the envelopes with his right hand, feeling them crinkle and tear a little, since they were so delicate.
The love letters between the Princess Tosca and General Haruma, the founders of our nation, and that's the scion tree they grew together. It still lives to show their endearing love and remind us that love truly is the greatest of treasures. Xavier clenched his teeth hard and crumpled up the letters and ripped the small tree out of the soil. Oh, that's just great. You drag us all this way and get most of us killed over. Kicha was starting to complain, but Xavier just tossed the tree into her face and lifted Athena, shooting her in the face while she staggered back from getting hit by a tree. As flames burst out of her skull, Higgs had to quickly slap out the fire caught on his jacket. Xavier ignored us, though, and reached down, squeezing the Xeno aristocrat by the throat and yanking him into the air. Say that again, Xavier growled. Love is our greatest treasure.
Xavier squeezed hard and crushed the Xeno's throat, dropping him to the ground. As the Xeno choked and gasped for air, Xavier quickly shot the other prisoners in the head with Athena. For a moment, him and the remainder of his team stood there in silence. I'm fucking done with Xeno treasure. Human treasures only from now on, he growled, and began to limp back the way that they'd come, as his anger faded and was replaced with exhaustion. The others hesitated, then moved to follow. Captain Xavier Blood-Eyed Tetch, second most wanted pirate in the galaxy, sighed heavily as he tucked Athena and Aphrodite back into the holsters before reaching up to scratch his beard. So, we're all done with humanity. So, we're all done with the mutiny, right? Between that and those nightmare fuel creatures, we're all down to what? 15 of us? I told you all, there will be enough to go round. Oh, we got a boss, Higgs said with a gulp. Oh, you know I wasn't in on it, right, boss? Xavier set his hand on Higgs's shoulder, giving it a squeeze. I know, Higgs, I know. He looked around the old metal hull around them for a moment. The wreck of the JRS Kraken. Now here was a true human legend. He'd even heard the stories when he was a kid. Fat with loot from the Daedalus campaign, it was lost in the solar storm and went down with all hands in unknown system. Where here he was now in the hull. The only obstacle left was the cargo bay door in front of them now, and Sivan, Nassif's daughter, was working on the controls to the side. The fact that Harren and the others had tried to betray him made him sad, but nothing could be done about it. This was also why he'd left most of the crew back on the ship. He'd lost 30 good sailors and fighters today, but he still had more this time. He wasn't feeling very talkative this time, just a little worried. But then there was a click as the door controls were fixed, and the door itself slid open. And the door itself slid to the side. Xavier felt that usual hope rising within him, figuring that there would be gems and gold and alien artifacts. When the door opened fully, he saw inside crates. Okay, that's all right. They were transporting cargo, so it made sense that it would be stored in crates. And there were a great deal of crates. He walked forwards, having to limp since the servos in his cybernetic leg had seized up, with all the alien guts clogging them after his crew had fought through the bastards on the surface to make it into the ship. As he reached the first crate, he closed his good eye for a moment, there, that unflinching cybernetic eye still observing the crate, before he opened his other eye, and then opened the crate. He looked inside for a moment, and then closed the lid, walking over quietly to the shorter crate, walking over quietly to a shorter crate, which he sat on heavily. The crew looked at him with worried faces. For Xenos, they really cared for their human captain. They got especially worried when Xavier began to cry. Higgs hesitantly opened the lid on the crate. "What there?" he muttered softly, and pulled out one of the objects inside, a magazine. As he held it open, a page unfolded, and then he held it sideways. "Oi! Look at that! It's an old porno mag!" "Oh, wait!" Higgs pulled the manifest off the side and began to read. "It's all vintage ported stuff. Some of the first interspecies vids and pictures too. Boss, this stuff's really valuable. Just as the recordings we thought were lost to history. To the right collector. The right collector will pay for the stuff. Seriously, I guess the valuable treasure they had was history and porn." Xavier just had his head in his hands, crying, "I just want gold coins, treasure. Is that too much to ask?" He looked up for a moment, tears running down the sides of his face, over the scars and cuts, and into his beard, before he buried his face back into his hands. Dread Captain Xavier Blood-Eyed Tetch, most wanted pirate in the galaxy, had to admit that the view from the surface of the planet was pretty spectacular. The rings and bright moons in the sky made for one hell of a view. Plus, the stars were as vivid and bright as he remembered them being as a kid. "Come on, Cap!" He heard and sighed, pulled from his reprieve as he walked over to follow the others through the small grove of blue and gleaming white moon trees. Beautiful night out, and to be honest, he'd had fun so far. The riddles had gotten a bit trickier as they followed them across the planet, but he'd figured them out and been good sport in pretending that he didn't notice the clues his crew were dropping. When they came out of the grove and he saw the giant X on the ground, in the gully, he had to keep himself from laughing and spoiling it. "Oh, well, Cap, look at that. X marks the spot, just like the old treasure map said. I told you that we'd need shovels," Higgs said with a grin. Yeah, Higgs. Good thing you brought them," Xavier said with a forced smile. "But, I got this one." He walked down to the gentle slope to the center of the X and switched view modes on his cybernetic eye. He located the metal crate beneath the surface and then jammed his upgraded left arm down into the ground, gripping the top and yanking it free of the soil. Good thing the soil had been dug up recently, so it was nice and soft. When he saw the crate, he noticed the cooling unit on the sides and snorted before setting it down. "Oh, wow, boss, look at that! A chest of buried treasure. Well, go on then, open it." He glanced around and saw the happy and cheerful faces of his crew. He couldn't let them down, so he smiled and flipped the latch with a soft click and pulled the lid up. He didn't expect gold and gems and alien artifacts, but inside there were glittery gold coins, illuminated by the light of the top of the crate that made them shine more clearly in the night. Wow, look at that. Ancient gold coins from Earth. Oh, wow, look at that, boss. Wow, boss. Wow, look at that. Ancient gold coins from Earth, boss. Xavier picked up a coin and peeled back the wrapper, biting the chocolate inside. He actually nodded at the taste and chewed slowly before swallowing. What? Higgs asked, now obviously confused. They're chocolate, Higgs. You bought this crate from a Dosh trawler, yeah? They love chocolate. To them, this really was worth whatever you thought you were paying for a crate of ancient gold coins. Didn't you wonder why they kept it refrigerated? Higgs' shoulders slumped, and Xavier noticed the forlorn looks on the other Xenos. Hey now, don't look so sad. I had fun tonight, and look around. He waved at the gleaming trees around him, and then the rings and the moons in the sky. Look at this wonderful spot you took me to. It's beautiful. Oh, when did you figure it out, boss? Higgs asked. When you brought me the map. Higgs, no one actually makes a treasure map on paper with riddles and clues like that. But it was a very nice gesture. Come on, guys, get some of this chocolate. It's good stuff. As his crew clustered around, he hugged some of them to his sides as they began to laugh and smile at the whole situation. Well, Boscha, I guess you could say the greatest treasure is He stopped as Xavier jammed the barrel of the gun up under his chin. Don't you fucking say it, Xavier growled, completely serious. The greatest treasure is gold and gems and alien artifacts. That's what I was going to say, boss, Higgs gasped out. Xavier pulled the gun back, holstering it, as his friend gulped and rubbed his chin nervously. What I mean is the greatest treasure is family jewels of a long-dead space king I heard about. Xavier was quiet for several seconds. Did you really hear about? No, forget it. Let's just eat the chocolate and go home. Xavier had learned his lesson by this point. But what if Higgs had really... No, he was done. But maybe. End of story. Alright, I think that's going to be the last story for the day. We did some decent... We did 3, that's cool. Done about an hour of narration. Maybe a little longer. Although we still do need to do thumbnails. So let's do some thumbnails. Nope, today was Onion Ninja free. Yeah, same time tomorrow. Yeah, well, Sundays do definitely seem to be the more popular stream, which is understandable. It's Alright, so thumbnails. We'll do thumbnails and then probably end the stream. Right. Bird brains.
Man in a space peacock suit. Cheers, James. I hope you have a fantastic day. Same to you, Megumi. Same to you. Bot. Hello, bot. Goodbye, bot. Bot is banned. Hydration. This eye is getting annoying. And then the last one was grinning human. Cheers, etc. Thank you for popping past. It's very much appreciated. Yes, confusion. I'm still waiting for the background to generate. The sports background was for the previous one. Alrighty, that is all the thumbnails done. Dun dun dun. I think I'm going to call it a day. Thank you all for stopping past, spending your day with me. It's very much appreciated. Hopefully I was entertaining enough to warrant the attention. I will be back tomorrow. Same time, same place, 10 a.m. GMT plus 2. I hope you all have a fantastic one and stay safe. I hope you have a